Did you know you see synergy all over the place? Last spring, whenever it was turning into fall and winter, you saw geese flying in flocks shaped like V. Well, that's called synergy. Hey, it's Kylie again, and in this episode, I'll be talking about Habit 6. Habit 6 is all about synergy. The book says that synergy is achieved when two or more people work together to create a better solution than either could alone. Synergy is celebrating differences and teamwork, but synergy is not tolerating differences and working individually. In synergy, no part is more important, just different. When you work your way up to synergy, you have to learn how to celebrate differences. When people usually think about diversity and just differences in general, they usually think of like race and gender. I know that I do. Well, until I read this part of the book. The book says that the 3 levels to hearing or learning about diversity is level 1, shunner's profile, which means they're convinced that the only way is their way. Level 2, tolerator's profile, which means everyone has a right to be different. And a quote they usually say is, "You do you, and I'll do me." Level 3 is celebrator's profile, which means that they value differences, and the book says that diversity equals creative sparks, which equals opportunity. I'm mostly tolerators and celebrators diversity, which just means that I don't celebrate everyone's differences, but I try to tolerate them if I don't celebrate them. One thing that I didn't realize until I read that part of the book was that it's not just physical, like external diversity, there's also internal diversity. For example, we learn differently. The first type of learnings is linguistic, which means you learn through reading, writing, and telling stories. Then there's logical, mathematical learning, which means learning through logic, patterns, categories, and relationships. Then there's bodily kinesthetic, which is learning through bodily sensations, touching. And then there's spatial learning, which is learning through images and pictures. There's musical learning, which is learning through rhythms and sound. There's interpersonal learning, which is learning through interaction and communications with others. There's intrapersonal learning, which is learning through your own feelings. I'm linguistic and spatial, which just means that if I have something that I'm reading or writing, I also like to have pictures so that I understand it better. We also see differently. Everyone has different paradigms and points of views about everything. So nothing is really seen the same way. We have different traits, personalities, and styles. The book allows you to take a quiz. It's just pencil and paper quiz. And basically what you have to do is there's a word and you have to put on a scale from 1 to 4 how much you would apply that word to your life. So for example, imaginative. You would, if you didn't really apply it to your life, you would put a 1. Or if you are all the time imagining things, then you would put a 4 on there. Well, the book says that I am a grape, which means my natural abilities include being reflective, being sensitive, being flexible, being creative, and preference for working in groups. That is scary accurate because I like to do all of those things, and that just perfectly describes me, but there's more, and this is also scary accurate. It says grapes learn best when they can work and share with others, balance work with play, can communicate, and are non-competitive. Grapes may have trouble giving exact answers, focusing on one thing at a time, and organizing. To expand their style, grapes need to pay more attention to details, not rush into things, and be less emotional when making some decisions. That really called me out, to be honest with you, because I get emotional a lot. I'm a very emotional person, and I do actually need to be less emotional about making decisions. So that called me out a lot, and it was scary accurate. There are roadblocks to celebrating differences. For example, there's ignorance, which means you're just clueless. Um, for example, I saw a video clip of a movie one day, and it was basically this girl that bumped into this deaf guy, but she didn't know that deaf people could read lips. So she goes, oh, I'm so sorry. And then the dude goes, oh, it's okay. And she goes, I thought you were deaf. He said, well, I thought you were smart. And that just shows that, like, ignorance is mostly present in, like, people that have disabilities, because people just don't realize that they can do things like us. Then there's cliques, which is just groups of people that don't include other people. That's whenever it can be bad. Like, groups of friends could be considered cliques, but it becomes bad whenever they don't include anyone else. And in 3rd grade, I had an experience with that, because there was this group of girls that I really wanted to hang out with, but they didn't let me into their little friend group, and it low-key crushed my little 3rd grade soul. So yeah, cliques can be bad, but most of the time they're not. There's prejudice, which means that everyone is created equal, but not everyone is really treated equal. My brother is mixed, and my mom was white. So my mom, like, all the time gets questions like, oh my goodness, is that really your son? Like, is he yours? Da, 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 da. Like, are you babysitting him? And she gets really fed up with it because people are really prejudiced towards them. Also, prejudice is learned. It's not like you were born with it, like seeing or talking. Like, prejudice is learned through other people in your life and how they influence you. The book has a quote on page 191. It says, I just wish that people would realize that everyone, no matter where they're from or what color they are, deserves the same opportunities. And I 110% agree with that, because, like I said, my brother is mixed and so is my stepmom. So it just makes it harder, honestly. And my stepmom and my real mom, they're also married. So that's another thing people are going to be prejudiced about. So it's really crappy, honestly. That was only half of Habit 6. Celebrating differences isn't the only thing that you need to do to get to synergy. The book says on page 193, synergy is more than just compromise or cooperation. Compromise is 1 plus 1 equals 1.5. Cooperation is 1 plus 1 equals 2. Synergy is 1 plus 1 equals 3 or more. It's creative cooperation with an emphasis on the word creative. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. The book has an action plan to getting to synergy. The first one is define the problem or opportunity, which just means find what the problem is so that you'll be able to have easier steps throughout. Then there's the step their way, which means you have to understand things from their point of views, like put yourself in their shoes. Then there's the step my way, which is letting them understand your point of view and having them stand in your shoes. Brainstorming is basically just creating new opportunities and just creating new ideas so that you'll be able to solve it correctly and honestly. A little side note is If you have a high RBA, which is basically just the relationship bank account with that person, then you can skip the first 3 steps and go straight to brainstorming. But if you have a low RBA with someone, you might need to spend a little bit more time in the first 3 steps so that you can communicate clearly. To be honest, I really did not know about these action plans because I haven't read this book before, so whenever I read it, that was the first time that I found it out. I'm glad I did because there are a lot of situations that I could apply that to and have people trust me more and just have overall clear communication skills. In Synergy, there's teamwork. There's plotters, which are the people who stick to the job and make sure that everything gets done. There's followers, which is people who are supportive of the leaders and can follow through with whatever plan there is. The innovators are creative people. The harmonizers are the people who create the unity and support and just make everything more fun and enthusiastic. Then there's show-offs, which are people who are fun to work with, but they can also be hard sometimes because they're show-offs and they like to show off a bunch of things and are kind of stubborn. I honestly didn't know this part of Synergy I've experienced before because in group projects I'm usually the plotter and the follower because I stick to my job, but I also follow whatever the leader or whoever is saying so that everything will be in order. So in Habit 6, I talked about synergies and ways to achieve it, and I also talked about some diversity and the action plan to help yourself achieve synergy. I really encourage you to follow the action plan because I feel like it will help you communicate clearly and just help your overall relationships with people. Last thing I want to say is just embrace being different and embrace having the opportunity to celebrate differences and using them to your advantage. With that being said, have an awesome day.